Hey everyone, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 2 class. Good to see you today. Well, I can't see you, but you can see me. So here I am, and hopefully you're having a good day. We're going to talk today about factoring, continuing on that theme. This lesson is actually called factoring by grouping. When you group numbers together, it means that you basically put them into a group, or take them where they were not in a group and then put them into groups, or a group or multiple groups. In this case, typically we're going to take ones that were not in a group and we're going to place them into two groups. We're going to make two groups. Now you could make more groups than that, but for the factoring that we're doing, we'll pretty much just stick to two different groupings here. Okay. So if you go down and look, or if you look down at the screen here, I'm going to put up something that we actually probably couldn't factor with the current set of guidelines or certain set of rules that we've already learned. You're not really going to be able to factor this. You're going to look at this and go, what is that? I've never seen that before. Okay? And you're right, you haven't seen that before. Because we have a third, and whoops, I wrote that wrong. That's a square. Sorry. And a square, and a regular term with no exponent, and then a constant term. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. So what are we going to do here? What should we do in this case? How should we handle this? Well, the best way to do this, and if you're looking in your book there on page number 34, you'll see where it gives you a set of rules. And number one, the first rule, you want to arrange that in descending order. What does that mean? You want it to look like it does. It's already in descending order. 3, 2, 1, 0, basically. That's what you're looking for. And we already have that one in that order, so that's good. Second step says to group the terms. Now, one thing that's interesting about grouping, factoring by grouping, is that sometimes you can do it a little differently and still come out with the same answer. And even I've seen it where you can do it a little differently and come out with a different answer. So, one person might argue that their answer's right, and another person might argue that their answer's right. Well, if you'll stick with the rules that I'm giving you, and if you'll kind of do it the way that I'm asking you to do it, you'll get the answer that I'm looking for. All right, so now, what do I mean by group them? Well, you just take parentheses, and you just say, okay, I'm going to put these two together, the first two, and I'm going to put these two together, the second two. The next step is you want to common factor them. Common factor. So we're going to pull out any common factors. What's common here? Well, we have an x squared here, and there's an x squared inside of that as well. So x squared is common. That's what comes out. Well, what happens when you divide this by x squared? That's right, you get x. Plus, what happens when you divide this by x squared? That cancels, and we get 4. Okay. Now, what do you see that's common over here? The 4. That's right, we're going to pull the 4 out. And so now we're going to end up with x plus 4, because remember we divide both of those by 4. All right, so now this looks a little bit more interesting here. It looks a little different. It looks, basically, what have we done? We've undistributed. We've used our properties that we talked about in the first week of school, and we've undistributed, and we've also done what's called association, and we associated them together, or we grouped them together. And so now what we can do is use our third property principle that we've learned, and that is the commutative. In commutative, you can actually move things as long as you're adding or multiplying and we don't change anything. Another way to look at this is that you are factoring out. You're removing this common factor. Okay. There's really kind of two different ways to look at that. I see both sides. That some students look at it as, okay, I'm removing the x plus 4, and that's really probably the best way to look at it. The other way would be to, I'm just combining those terms. And at some point you would have to remove the other one too. But yes, here's what we're going to do. We are going to remove the common factor. Well, what's the common factor in these two? It's the x plus 4. So what are we left with? We're left with 1x plus 4, not 2. Why not 2? Because it was a common factor, and when we remove common factors, we only take one of those. Okay? So like when we removed a common factor here, we didn't take 2 4s out of that. We only took 1 4 out of it. We took a 4. Basically, we divided by that and got 1, and we divided by that and got 1. Okay? And so the same thing's happening here in this one as happened up here when we divided by 4 and got 1. Divided by 4 and got 4. Or, divided the 16 by 4 and got 4. Now, on this one, when we divide that out, what we're doing is we're factoring it out and it's coming outside. Now, what are we left with? Well, we're left with this. And so that's one of our factors. That's the common factor that we pulled out. What's left? Well, these common factors, and we just put those together using the association principle, associative principle, commutative principle, kind of a little combination there of moving things around and switching things around and grouping them together. And that would be our answer. Okay, that would be our answer. Now, one thing that you want to do before you just circle it is you would want to check this to see if you can factor that any further. Because it's a plus sign, you can't. Now, what would have happened if it was an x squared minus 4? Now we can factor it a little bit further. We can go and we can do the conjugates there, and we get x plus 2, x minus 2. Okay? But it's not a minus sign, it's a plus sign. There is no way to factor that. That is prime. We are done right there. Okay? All right, let's do one more. That was so much fun. I know. You love that. So let's do one more. They do the same one. I don't really like that example. Let's go ahead and let's do one from here. Let's do n3 plus 5n2 plus 5n plus 25. All right. N cubed plus 5n squared plus 5n plus 25. Now we want to group this. Well, first of all, we want to put it in order. It's already in order. So now we can just group this thing. And now we're going to look for the common factors. Well, there's an n squared there. So the n squared is going to come outside. What's left inside? N plus 5 plus what comes out? A 5. And we're n plus 5 inside. Now we take one of these n plus 5s because we factor it out, and we get n plus 5, and then what's left over here? N squared plus 5, and that would be our final answer. All right, so those aren't too bad once you kind of get the concepts going there of how to associate things together, how to group things together. All right, one more that I want to show you and we'll be done for today. I want to show you how to group if, now this is like, all right, let me just show this to you and I'll tell you what it's like here in a second. 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. Now you might look at that and say, there's only 3 terms. I don't need to group that. I know how to factor that. And you're right, you know how to factor this. But let me give you a little shortcut here, a little life hack right here that maybe you'll like. You might look at this and go, oh my goodness, that is so easy, I love it. Or you might look at it and go, oh my goodness, you just blew my mind. I want to do my other way. I want to do my factors. I want to do 2 times 1, and I want to do 2 times 2, and 1 times 4, and I want to try to get this middle term. Trial by error, okay? On the handout that I gave you, I think that it said slip and slide. Okay, so you're just testing and trying things. And that's the method that I've showed you up to this point. But now I'm finally going to tell you that there is really technically a way to do this. And it is kind of interesting, kind of helpful. Well, what you can do is you can take the product of the first and the third term. What's the product of 2 times negative 4? Well, that equals 8 negative 8, okay? And so what we want to do with that is we want to look at that and say, okay, so that is my product. And so what I want to do with my product is I want to now find what sums of my factors are going to give me this. Okay, so let me erase this. And let's put the negative 8 up here. So that's my 2 and my 4 multiplied together gave me my negative 8. Now, I want to factor this. I want to come out with its factors. So I would have 1 and 8, and I would have 2 and 4. Those are the factors. Now, what I want to do is I want to, in my mind, I want to split this into things where if you add them, or in this case, remember, it's a negative 8, so this could be negative or positive. This could be positive or negative. Okay, either one of those could be positive or negative because it's a negative 8. So in my mind, I want to play around with those numbers, adding and subtracting them in my mind, or basically splitting them, okay, to give me this number, to give me that middle number, that negative 7. Well, what two numbers together give you negative 7? That's right there. So if we take, now here's where the grouping comes in. You say, I'm not grouping yet. That's what I've been doing all the time. I know that's what you've been doing all the time, but here, wait, we haven't factored it yet, okay? Now here comes the grouping. So I write it again, 2x squared, and I write my minus 4. So I write this the same, and I write this the same. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to split that into 2 terms. Right now it's in one term, it's negative 7. I'm going to split that into a positive 1x and a negative 8x. What did I do right there? I took this number and I used these factors over here. So I just took those factors and put them in there. Now again, some of you are looking at this going, oh no, you're blowing my mind right now. I don't understand it. That's fine. Shut off the video. Stop. Okay, don't learn this. But this is for those of you who are following this going, oh, that's interesting. Okay, oh, that sounds like it'll save me some time. Okay, if you're thinking that right now, then good. We are going to save you some time. So what we want to do now is we want to group these together. And I'm going to put that negative sign inside of that. So we're going to be adding that. Basically we're adding a negative. So we're taking 1x and we're adding a negative 8x. And that gets us to our 7x, right? So if you have 1x and you add a negative 8x, you would get your negative 7x. Okay, so that's what we want in the middle. That's how we want the middle to look. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're splitting this middle term. Okay, and the way that we want to split it is by saying, let me put that plus sign back in there, 1x plus negative 8x. That's what we're doing. All right, now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and factor out what we can factor out. Well, what factors out of this first part? An x, that's right. And so we're going to end up with x times 2x plus 1 plus, well, technically it's going to go negative here, but we'll put a plus there for now. What comes out of here? A negative 4. Okay, and so we're left with a negative 4, and then we have, if we're dividing everything by negative 4 now, so that comes out to a 2x plus 1. And now here's our common factor. And so we use that one once, 2x plus 1. And then we use our leftovers here. And instead of writing it a plus minus, you could just write it x minus 4. Because whenever you have x plus a minus 4, it kind of gets a little weird looking. So what does this mean? That means minus 4. Because if you have two signs next to each other, if it's a plus and a minus, it's a negative. If it's a minus minus, then it's a plus. Okay, so you can just combine those signs there and make it a minus. Okay, so anytime you have a minus and a plus together, it's going to give you a minus sign. If you wrote it like this, if you wrote it x plus a minus 4, I wouldn't mark it wrong. It's just not the way that we would write that one. All right, so that is the answer. That's what you come up with. Now, you could go back up here to the very beginning before I did all of this, and you could factor out your 2, and you could factor out your -4, and you could multiply them all out there, and you could figure it all out, and you could come up with your -7 in the middle. And when you did that, your answer would be the same as the way I did it with grouping. So it's just another way. If you don't like it, you don't need to use it, but I just thought that I'd give it to you, and you'd be able to use that possibly in the future. Maybe it's a shortcut for you. Okay? All right, that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you learned something today, and you can do a little bit better on some of these factoring problems in the future. All right, we'll see you later. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.